We're in an undisclosed location right now that apparently has a lot of paranormal activity.
Two trains were passing through this mountain pass.
Where we're standing right now is actually the runaway tracks.
There's a long open-air tunnel, very haunted.
There was so much tragedy that happened here.
We hear this loud scream. It was terrifying.
My name's Bert Coates, and welcome to Locked Into Darkness. We're in an undisclosed location right now that apparently has a lot of paranormal activity. March 1st, 1910, there was a huge avalanche that hit two waiting trains on the tracks right next to me. Hit it so hard that it shoved them off the side of the mountain into the gully, killing over 96 people. During one of the worst snowstorms in recorded history, two trains came through the Cascade Tunnel, stopping in this location. There was so much snow over the tracks, the trains couldn't continue with their journey.
About 100 years ago, two trains were passing through this mountain pass that we're right beneath the summit of, and they got stuck in an incredibly bad series of snowstorms. The passenger train was train number 25. Was headed from Spokane to Seattle, and it had stopped at Cascade Station waiting to clear the lines through the tunnel.
I'm standing in front of the old Cascade Tunnel, built in 1900s and then closed in 1929 when they had to move the tunnel farther down. There was no ventilation system, and the trains were running off of coal. The engineer had to deal with asphyxiation and heat for that whole 2 miles. A lot of times the engineers would pass out. The train was on a fast track to disaster.
They had to go all the way through the tunnel because you can't park a train in the tunnel. The locomotive smoke would asphyxiate the passengers because there's no airflow through the tunnel. Really, their fate was sealed when they crossed through the tunnel.
The train would come out of the tunnel and stay on the runaway track side unless they signaled the train station. But if there was no signal, they'd actually stay on the runaway track. And then where we're standing right now is actually the runaway tracks.
There was so much tragedy that happened here, and yet it was also the scene of incredible heroism. They worked themselves nearly to death to get those tracks clear.
Running out of coal, water, and food, there wasn't a lot they can do. The superintendent of the railroad decided to move the trains further down track while they tried to buck through the snow, not far from this location. Stuck, helpless, with no help coming.
The rotary snowplows that were chewing the tracks clear ahead of the trains ran out of coal. The trains became trapped here for about a week.
The day before the avalanche, there were some people that were on the train strong enough to hike out of here. So on foot, they hiked into the town of Scenic.
When the first group of passengers had hiked out at about 1:45 in the morning, lightning hit the hillside above the trains.
March 1st, 1910, the top of that mountain behind me cut loose. The snowslide swept both trains off the tracks. Over 96 people lost their lives in that snowslide, passengers and workers.
Basically, an entire slab of the mountainside came sliding down, swept the trains clean off the tracks, and dropped them about 150 feet down in the canyon floor, utterly crushing them through the trees.
My grandfather's uncle was one of the witnesses for the avalanche. Apparently he had been walking from one building to another around 1 in the morning when he saw a big white mass falling down the mountainside, and I think he quoted it, a crescendo of sound.
I mean, could you imagine you're laying in bed, you're about ready to fall asleep, and all of a sudden the train picks you up, and you're being thrown down a hill along with a bunch of rocks and boulders and people and chunks of metal, and probably something I would remember for the rest of my life. But you can see where the steam pipes actually wrapped around the stump. Could you imagine the amount of force that it would take to wrap those pipes around that stump? I mean, that's a lot of pressure.
When it finally hit the trains, it carried them right over the edge of the tracks, down in the ravine, and crushed them like, I believe the term was, like an elephant had stomped on a cigar box. Some of the bodies were actually located by blood trails in the snow. They didn't recover the last body until 3 months after the accident, because they were working in the dark using torches and it was also in the middle of a lightning storm. What really draws me back here is the history of those men, the railroad workers, and how hard they fought to clear those tracks. I don't think they've ever really gotten the recognition they deserve for the amount of work that they did.
The slide apparently had almost, or had come close to hitting the train station, which would have ended somewhere over there by that white sign. So after the avalanche had happened, and word got out of how destructive it was and how many people it had killed, obviously the railroad wanted to do something about it. So they built the snow shed. Enclosed the snow shed, but they didn't stop just there. They enclosed probably 98% of the track all the way down the Cascade Mountains. Now, other things had to happen too, because people remember such a horrible disaster. They moved the entire train station and then renamed the town.
The last survivor to be pulled out was pinned under wreckage with her 18-month-old baby underneath her, and she said she actually felt the baby die while she was waiting to be rescued. She was never quite the same after that.
So I've been investigating the paranormal for about 10 years now. And it took 4 years for me to see what I needed to see. And after that, the fear factor was over. Now it was just more or less trying to figure out what it was. So really, when it comes to the paranormal, I don't think it's evil or demonic. And most of the time, I don't think it's anything at all. So I thought I'd put bravery to the test. And I started doing this on my own. And my conclusion, the only thing you have to fear is your own mind.
I was here for several hours on July 11th of 2009, and from that point on, I was a believer.
We're at a unique site. There's a long open-air tunnel, which I know sounds weird, but it's there. Very haunted.
One of the claims of paranormal activity is you can hear children inside the snow shed. And according to some of the records, the children did die on the train when the avalanche came down the mountain and destroyed the train, just obliterated them.
So we got a really interesting video up here of somebody peeking behind one of the pillars, and it really looked like a child.
So just a second ago, I had turned to the right, and you can see the pillars behind me. It looked like a white, almost, I don't know, body had kind of swung around the pillar and looked out.
The experiences here we've had over the years, we've seen so many different entities with our own physical eyes darting back and forth between columns.
I've seen full-bodied apparitions here. The first thing that I noticed was the children here. There are children here, and they're very interactive.
There were some eyes. Are you recording? Yep. There's some eyes that we witnessed that are in the tree line over here, and you can clearly see the deer track. It's a little creepy when you look into the woods and your flashlight hits a pair of eyes that are looking at you. So here are the deer tracks right there. Here are hoof prints. One there. Kind of hard to see. It's very exciting. The area itself is very dark. There's a lot of trees behind me. Well, since we're in the middle of woods, in the middle of nowhere, with just myself and the cameraman, I could see how your nerves could be on edge.
There's a spot where really strange things happen, where you walk by this pole in the snow shed and you feel dizzy, and I've had that happen more times than I know what to do with.
So right as soon as I passed the pillar, my ears started ringing, and it's like I lost my balance. My equilibrium's like totally off. I don't even know where the hell I put my recorder. Oh, come on. Sorry, we're going to do a recording session to see if there's anybody willing to talk to us. So I'm going to try to use a couple of trigger objects. This is Bert, recording session for number 1, undisclosed location in the middle of the Cascade Mountains. The thing that I have in my hand is a recorder, it's a recording device. And because I can't hear you if you're speaking to me, but this device here will pick up on your voice. So if you're here, if there's somebody in front of me or next to me, and you want to tell me what your name is, that would be fantastic. All right, here's a photo of the superintendent's house. I don't know if you can recognize this photo or if you could even see it, but that picture was taken just a couple days ago. Whoever's living in this house is definitely taking very good care of it. I know that you and your wife lived there for a very long time, and I know that both of you had this wonderful love affair. So this is what it looks like today. And you should be proud of the people that own it now. Mark that time as a possible EVP. So I had heard some disembodied voices to the left of me. So I'm going to mark the time on the recorder as 6 minutes and 20 seconds. I'm still feeling this really lightheadedness in this area, and I'm not quite sure why. Is there anything that I could do for you or pass on a message maybe to these homeowners that own your house? If you don't mind now, I'd like to talk about the past a little bit. Is there anything that you would like to add to the history that nobody knows? I kind of know who you are just from the history that I've read, and I know that you know that there was nothing you could have done. Would there be anybody here that would like me to pass a message on to a loved one? Did you hear that? It sounded like kids. Mark the time. 11 minutes, 10 seconds. So we're going to move to another location. I'm going to bring some photos up off the internet. I'll show you pictures on this this book that I have. Maybe pictures of when you were a kid, or maybe when you worked this railroad. Man, look at this. During an investigation, apparently there was a sighting or sound of what they believed to be Sasquatch, which has also been seen in this area.
As I was coming through the snow shed, I was singing at the top of my lungs, like nursery rhyme songs like This Old Man and London Bridge is Falling Down, from the beginning of the snow shed all the way to the overlook. When we came down the overlook, from behind us and above, we hear this loud scream, this whoop!
Yeah.
And this like insane cackling noise. It was terrifying.
So I'm going to set up the digital voice recorder again and see if we could capture some conversation. If you're still here, you're still with us, there's a little orange light. And I'm going to flip that little light around this way for you. There we go. And that's where you would talk into, because once again, I can't hear you with my ears, but I will be able to hear you on this digital voice recorder. We need another trigger object. I think we're going to go ahead and use Bert for a trigger object. So if you want to, and if you'd be so kind, you know, maybe comment on any of these photos that you see on the screen. So here, this is around the 1900s, and I'm going to butcher the name of this town. I don't know if you can see it or not. Do you recognize that town at all? It's spelled as dumbass, but it's really called Damas. Now I'm hearing some noise behind me, and I don't know Don't know what it is, but we have a light set up on the walkway just in case we capture, you know, something walking past it. All right, here's another photo that you might recognize. That was in the town of Boerne. Looks like they're digging out a tunnel of some sort. I don't know if it's a train, for a train to go through, or if it's something else. This is a very secluded area, very secluded, and very hazardous area. You know, I know that some of the theories or the ideas of the moon being, you know, really close to Earth also brings, you know, a lot of energy that's needed for, you know, these spirits or these ghosts to manifest. So we're not getting a lot of responses. I don't think we're getting a lot of responses. So what the hell is that? Okay, what I just saw was something very large and very black fly right straight through the snow shed entrance, right off of the walkway there. You didn't disappear on me, did you? It was a solid black object. It was real tall. It stood upright. I mean, it wasn't like an animal or well, it was an ape. I know that sometimes, especially when you start diving into the investigating the paranormal, they have a way of leading you away from wherever they want you to go. And because I'm dumb enough, I of course run right after them. We're in the area where the town sat, and as we were setting up for the next recording session, I heard off in the distance over there a woman's voice.
So one interesting thing we discovered when we started coming out here is that the activity isn't just located in the snow shed where the tragedy occurred. There was a whole town where the parking lot is now, and it's been very active.
So apparently White Noise Paranormal had captured an EVP in this very parking lot, which used to be part of the town. They captured an EVP of a woman asking if she should show herself.
We were walking down through the snow shed with a large group of people, and after the group of people had gone on to another area, I was alone in the parking lot making coffee. And to encourage it to interact, I said, you know, I'll make you a cup of coffee. And I could hear fragments of a woman or a child's voice. It was very high-pitched. Clearly says, put it out. When I did finally make that cup of coffee and set it on the table for them, I heard 3 EVPs, 3 distinct voices. A female said, thank you for putting me a cup of coffee. And then a child's voice said, thank you. And a man's voice with a very interesting accent said, a whole cup of hot coffee.
Over my right-hand shoulder is, you clearly see the moon. You know, with the moon being as bright as it is, it's a double-edged sword, you know. We get all that light, but it also has a negative effect as far as what we think we're seeing and what we're not really seeing. You know, shadows off of trees can turn into, of course, really tall ghosts. So we'll continue with the recording session. The clicking noise you heard was my flashlight. All right, so you have this orange light, and if you could speak more or less into the light. There it is again. If you're wanting to communicate with us, The device in my hand is just a mechanical device that records your voice and mine. And because I can't hear you with my ears, I will when I play this back. And just tell me who you are, so I know who I'm talking to. And then, of course, why you're here. This is definitely a very beautiful area, an area I'd like to hang out at. Do you vacation here, or is this something that is more long-term? Was that you? Well, I think this is going to have to wrap it up for the night. It's getting cold. It's getting late. I'm getting tired. There's definitely a lot of activity that was going on inside the covered area where the avalanche came down and you know, took those 2 trains out. But also in where the town sat, there seems to be some activity here too. The activity is definitely slowed down or has stopped, so we can wrap it up for the night. And it was quite a drive to get out of here, so we'll just call it a night, and we'll see what happens. Listen to this and you know, come back and answer the questions if they have any questions. You have a location that you believe is haunted. Maybe there's some demonic entity that's just driving you crazy. If you do, you can contact me at duckfacers.com/lockedintodarkness.